Hey there everybody, it's Nathan Cool with nathancoolphoto.com, and it's time for the annual real estate photography report as we head into 2022. This will be based off of partly the real estate photography survey that ended in 2021, as well as some other market insights that I'll be getting to. So this is going to be a few different parts. First, I'll cover quickly the statistics that were gathered from the real estate photography survey. And then I'll talk about the trends that are starting to happen in 2021 to 2022 and things to look for, and then I'm going to be following that up with some other advice and some tips based off of all this as we head in through 2022 and what to expect throughout the year. So first off, let's start with the results of the survey. First question, which sets the stage for the rest of the data, is how many years were you working as a real estate photographer when you took this survey? This year, we once again had hundreds of real estate photographers that took this survey, and once again, we see that the predominant amount is between 1 and 5 years, with also some experienced real estate photographers doing this for 6 to 10 years, but very few doing it longer than that. And there's a couple reasons for that to bear in mind. One, we do know that there's attrition within real estate photography because it is a very difficult career. So one of the things you always want to just wait for is some of your competitors to fall off and take on other careers, and it opens up the door for you to do something. But also bear in mind that most of my audience is toward the educational side of things. So yes, I do work as a full-time real estate photographer, but that educational side of where I'm selling my books, I've got all my tutorials, then that's my audience that I'm directing this survey to. So there will be a lot of newer photographers here. So I'm going to bear that in mind as we go through the rest of these statistics. Next thing that I asked was, how did 2021 compare to 2020? And I can also attest that this was very much right on. 2020 took off for a lot of us, and 2021 definitely had somewhat more gigs. That was the predominant answer from this survey. And also then next in line was then photographers being overloaded with work. So there was a lot of work that came in, and some of that's because of some of the add-ons and some of the other things that I'm going to talk about when it comes to these market shifts and why it's requiring some other photography work to be done, and also replacing some of the attrition problem that's starting to happen in the real estate photography market. You can though see that it's very few that were dropped off or had somewhat fewer gigs, and of course some people just stayed the same, but predominantly definitely was a pickup for most of us real estate photographers in 2021. A real quick one here is, do I work with a team or do I work alone? Once again, predominantly it's the independent real estate photographers that took this survey. So bear that in mind as you're working through this. Now, a lot of the teams that are out there, they will have a higher attrition rate typically if you're talking about the photo mills. Now, I work on a very small team. So we've got Jonathan, he does the drone, also does some video work for me. And we've also got Dion, who does some of the video editing that we do. So we have a small team, but for the most part, I do work alone. So this is kind of a mix, but once again, it is primarily independent real estate photographers. It should come as no surprise that when we're talking about the format of camera, that it is now more going toward full frame than cropped sensor, which is something that has picked up in 2021. And a lot of that's because the affordability of full frame cameras has come down. The prices are much lower than what they used to be. So the barrier to entry to get into using full frame cameras is much lower than what it used to be, especially with some of the new mirrorless cameras coming out that are priced very slightly higher than some of the cropped sensor DSLR. So there's not much of a price difference here, and so full frame has become more predominant year over year. Mirrorless also, when we look at that has become more popular, but that's to be expected as new photographers get into the market, or as your gear is being antiquated, you need to upgrade that. So a lot of that isn't based necessarily on just because it's mirrorless, it's because of the availability of gear. Now, when I get down toward the end of this video, I'm going to talk a little bit more on some of the gear issues that we're facing right now in 2022 and some of my recommendations to bear in mind in general. So DSLRs are still going strong, and that's mostly a carryover, likely a carryover. And for instance, I've got about 6 different bodies that are DSLRs, and I've got now just a couple bodies that are mirrorless for certain types of work that I do. So DSLR is still going very strong, but a lot of that is an existing market, but it's still not something that's going to completely go away. You have to remember, every picture that you ever took a look at that you really loved, and any photo that you saw, if it wasn't taken in the last year, it was taken with an older camera and probably a DSLR. Anyways, just some food for thought. Mirrorless, though, is starting to come in, but doesn't mean you have to rush out and get one. It's more of what's available in the market. Taking a look at drones, this is very encouraging in that compared to previous years, there are more photographers that are using drones that are certified and insured. If you're not, and if you're one of these categories of not being certified, then yeah, you probably want to think about doing that just for your own sake and also to be able to have that professional appeal. There's still some that outsource the aerial work, and of course I do that because of Jonathan, I guess you could say, even though we're a team, he does all the drone work. But there's very little now that's doing the elevated tripod or a pole, and a lot of that too is because the availability of drones is much higher and some of the drone work has dropped off, and that's just not quite as popular for some shoots during this hot pandemic where they might not need that compared to some other of the additional add-ons, but it's still very popular. Drones will never go away, and there's a lot of stuff, of course, you can do with it, especially when it comes to real estate video, but there's very few that don't have any aerial work at all. A big question that always comes up with especially new real estate photographers is how many images should I shoot? And once again, this has stayed fairly steady between the 25 to 35 photo mark, and 25 is becoming a little less popular, and I believe that's also because, and this has happened with my clients, they need to have more shown to potential buyers because of the pandemic and also what's happening in the market with people making more non-visit, non-in-person visits before they actually make an offer. So the more they have, the better. And this is something also that I'll be covering after these statistics. This is the big one that everybody's always curious about, is what should I charge? What should I charge? Now, there's 3 different categories here. What I did was I took over here on the far left, everyone outside of the US or who might have left it blank in the US, but predominantly it was from overseas. These were the non-US statistics. And then the rest of these for the United States, these are the states that had input from photographers of at least 3 photographers per state. Need that as a minimum to even try to get an average. Had a lot come in from California and Florida, so those numbers are very accurate for what's coming in, and I can attest to that too for a large degree, and that median and average is about $300 for a shoot, and it can go well over $500 for some photography shoots, and this is just for photos. Our videos that we do cost a lot more than our photos, and virtual tours cost about the same price as photos based on the type of package that you would get. So you can easily triple this $500 mark when we do a high-end home here out in Southern California, where we're doing photos and we're doing drone and we're doing video, we're doing websites, we're doing virtual tour. But anyways, taking a look at that, you can see that it's very encouraging for just about all areas. So even when we get over to Pennsylvania, for instance, there was a number of photographers that submitted there, and we can see that the median, is being charged at about the $250 range. We've got the average that's a little bit higher than that, and there were some outliers that were charging quite a bit. So it is encouraging that yes, you can charge quite a bit for real estate photography depending on what you're doing, especially as we're starting to go into 2022. All prices are going up. Inflation is going up, cost of homes is going up, and of course your prices should be going up as well. We're raising our prices this year. You should too. So anyways, this falls in line though where we can see that there's a few areas that are below $200. Mississippi, kind of to be expected. Cost of living is a lot lower there. Cost of houses is also lower. Indiana, we can see that too. It's right below $200, but you really don't find anybody shooting at $100 or less, at least on the average. There were some recipients that did put that in there, and that brought the average and median down a little bit. If it wasn't for that, then they would be a lot higher. Also bear in mind that a lot of the photographers that took this survey did so in their early part of their career. And that's when a lot of photographers are very shy about raising their prices. So some of these prices may be skewed a little on the low side. I can take a look at the California one, and it does seem just about right, but it's kind of on the low side, especially when we think that most of the photos are being delivered in the 35 photo range. Taking a look at the technique, this is a little skewed. It's to be expected since with my audience I teach the flash ambient blending. So flambient was the highest photography technique that was used, but HDR is still popular, and you know, it's not something that I'm a big fan of, but it's not to be completely discounted either. There's this idea of using hybrid HDR and flash, and I'll cover that and why I don't really recommend that. I know some people are doing it. They think they were getting great results, but with your ISO invariant cameras that you're buying nowadays, especially everyone going mirrorless, to think about wasting the time doing HDR on top of it, you can pull so much dynamic range with some other tweaking of your ambient shots, doing the flambing if you want to go that route. I'll cover that later. If you have more interest in that and seeing a tutorial on that or anything else, leave me a comment down for this video. Anyways, flambient was the big one for the recipients that were doing this. Moving on to twilights as an add-on, this is becoming less popular, and once again it's the idea that what am I going to pay for as a realtor as add-ons? What do I have in my budget? And I can attest that there were very few twilights that were done last year. So this is probably a very accurate statistics, the same that I know from other photographers as well. There's so much other work to do other add-ons for the budget that a realtor may be spending on. That includes virtual tours. So virtual tour gigs did drop off from 2020. We can see here that virtual tour gigs, none was very high. And this is the 360 virtual tours. I'm not talking about slideshows. I'll get to that in a minute. We can see that predominantly besides none, it was 10% or less. But still they didn't completely go away, which we still had a fair amount between 10 and 50% of gigs that did require virtual tours. Those though are something that probably will become more popular, and I'll discuss that once again after these statistics. How did it compare though to 2020? So a lot of people said the same thing. They had fewer of these 360 virtual tour gigs than last year. And some had about the same, but there was a very few that said that they had somewhat more gigs than last year, and very few said that they had a lot more gigs than last year. So with houses flying off the market faster, this is to be expected. When those things change, anything also that can change with the pandemic, then of course we can have to keep an eye to see how this will go. If you're doing virtual tours, who was your host? Matterport continues to take the lion's share of the market. Cloud Pano really dropped off on here, and it's surprising for as much advertising as they do. If you've ever been on Facebook, you've probably seen a million ads of theirs. A newcomer is iGuide, which I've seen some great results from, but it's still very low in the usage here. So I would recommend though, if you're interested, take a look at iGuide. I have seen some great stuff come from that. Zillow continues to be high up there, but I'll tell you right off the bat, I know from my experience that my clients hate Zillow with a passion, so they won't pay me to do Zillow virtual tours. They'd rather have them hosted separately. So anyways, Matterport continues to take the lion's share, but most of that too is not using the Matterport camera. Of course, that's now using Ricoh cameras. And if you want a price shop, then my recommendation is still Cloud Pano, but this is just what the statistics showed. Besides the virtual virtual tours, another virtual solution that I've also seen increase have been the videos. And that's also why I did the book on basic real estate videography. And by the way, I've got all the links to my videos and other videos related to this, to my books and whatnot down in the description for this video. And my book on real estate videography was the idea that you can make some simple walkthrough videos, and those can be better virtual solutions that you can upsell. So we can see though that a lot of photographers still aren't providing video, but I can attest from just our work out here that we're getting a lot of video work. So you can see here 10% or less, 10 to 20%. So still kind of low here on the number of videos that at least the recipients to this, participants I should say, to this survey took. So let's take a look then at how videos were compared in 2021 compared to 2020. So it really didn't move the needle very much. It was about the same as 2020. Of course, we though got a lot of work in 2020. So knowing that, then this is a metric telling us that that is still very popular for an add-on. If we take a look at the slideshow tours, these continue to just drop off, and I'm not going to ask this again on another survey because these slideshow tours like Tour Buzz and whatnot, they're a thing of the past. I never liked them to begin with. My clients don't like them. If you're going to have a real virtual tour, they'll pay for a 360 virtual tour or a video. So these things are just dead in the water. The other question too, it's a little surprising that I figured by now that there'd be more Zillow certified photographers. I'm not. I didn't really see a need for it. And I guess a lot of others didn't because most of the participants in the survey said they were not a Zillow certified photographer. Floor plans are becoming more popular, but we're still seeing that there's not a high demand across most markets for that. So still really low on floor plans. I've only gotten asked once if I do them, even though there was no work. They just wanted to know, a realtor, hey, do you actually do floor plans if I need them? It's like, well, I could if you want. So anyways, they're just not that popular across the board from what we can see here. And I know that some of you will say, I get a floor plan for every one of my gigs. That's fine. This is across a broad range of photographers. So one of the last questions that I always like to ask in these surveys is, what do you feel is important to grow your business? And this is very typical year over year, that one of the first couple things that especially new photographers will say is they need to get more clients and improve their marketing. But one of the things that a lot of photographers don't realize is that real estate photography isn't like other genres, in that it's not a matter of just getting more clients, it's a matter of getting repeat clients. So that's something to bear in mind. So I know that a lot of you filling out this survey, and a lot of you probably just watching this video that never participated in the survey, and just watching this video, we're thinking the same thing, but I'm telling you, it's getting the clients that will give you the repeat work, and that will grow over time. So when we get to the third item here of improving your skills, yes, that is very, very important. And of course, that's why I concentrate so much on some of the tutorials here. And of course, increasing prices is critical right now. There's no reason why you should not, in 2022, be increasing your prices. If you had work in 2021, increase your prices. Everything's going up. It's time to do it. And of course, there were some other things. The last on the list was outsourcing editing. And you know that I'm not a fan of that. So I'll just leave it up to you to determine if that's something that would be right for growing your business. Not something I recommend. It's something that if you're working on a team, you can also work on that. If you shoot things properly while you're on site, and if you do up your editing skills, then you can save some money and have a higher quality product with a faster turnaround as well. Things I talk about in other videos. So anyways, those right now though are just the statistics, but there's a lot more that needs to be touched on next. So what can we gather from that? Well, we know going into 2022 that there's an inventory problem, there's a supply chain problem, and statistics are showing that houses were moving very fast in 2021 with a very low inventory. Now, the first thing that a lot of photographers think is, well, they're just going to be selling this house, they don't need pictures, but that actually isn't the case. It's becoming now more important than ever to a couple things to be able to up your game on real estate photography, and also think about the add-ons. With prices going up and with inventory being very low, sellers are becoming very discriminating about who they're going to hire to sell their homes. there are a number of FSBOs on there, for sale by owners, because the prices are so high that the real estate commissions that they have to pay out are extremely high. Knowing that they do have to pay a lot out of pocket to sell their house, then they're very cautious about just hiring any realtor. And so smart realtors know that if they're going to sell something for high dollar and get a lot of offers, that they need to be able to impress the seller to be able to get that listing by showing them that they can market their property very well. When they're interviewed by the seller before taking the listing, they'll always show, this is what I do to market your property. This is the photography work that I have done. I can provide 360 virtual tours. A lot of times call them 3D virtual tours. I can provide walkthrough videos, websites. I've got a big network, whatever. So you're a major part of that client, that real estate agent, being able to get that listing. So that's very important to do that. Also, we have to bear in mind that when we take a look at some of the statistics from the National Association of Realtors from 2021, we know, also similar to past years, that about 95% of all home buyers used nothing but online tools first. That was their first look into finding a home. So a realtor is important for a buyer, but it's not necessarily critical. They're really relying on what they see online. In fact, almost half of the average number of homes that were viewed online by potential buyers were done strictly online and never had a visit. So there's a lot more than listings that are having offers made on them by people that never visit the property. So the more that you can do to present a property at its best with quality photography and quality add-ons with virtual tours and videos, websites if you need to, whatnot, that then allows the job to become a little easier for the realtor. And when their job is easier, then, and you can make their job easier, they like using you as a vendor. We also have to bear in mind that there's going to be a slowing inevitably because of an affordability issue that will continue throughout the year. So prices have gone so high where it's starting to block some people already from the ability to purchase a home, especially first-time home buyers. So as those prices continue to go up from a couple things, one, we do have some inflation underway, which could be temporary. We have supply chain issues, which are causing problems with doing remodels and also new construction. So we're already seeing houses stay on the market slightly longer, and that will likely continue as we go through 2022, because as fewer houses are sold, then the inventory goes higher. When inventory goes higher, the prices could come down. But more importantly is that they would stay on the market longer, which means that the realtor would need to have a better package of marketing material that you could provide. Also, bear in mind, it's inevitable. We already know that real estate mortgages will increase. The interest rates are going up. World banks at the end of 2021 started raising their rates. The Fed in the United States also announced that it would be raising interest rates 3 times in 2022, which will inevitably put some pressure then on first-time home buyers and just home buyers in general for that affordability factor. All these things mean that houses could stay on the market longer, which means that houses need better marketing material, so thus needs better photography, virtual tours, and other add-ons. But while the importance of all this is very high, to have quality photos and good add-ons for everything that I just mentioned, you will probably see this trend continue and grow as we go throughout 2022. So we're just now getting into some of these trends. We've hit another phase of the never-ending pandemic, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen with inflation right now, but there's no sign and no great light at the end of the tunnel that would provide any more affordability for home buyers. Thus, it's almost inevitable that we will eventually eventually start seeing more homes come on the market, and thus we'll have that longer wait time to be able to sell a house, requiring then more marketing material. So these are all opportunities for you as a real estate photographer to bear in mind that even though it's slow right now, it's not going to stay that way, but there's more to it than that. All of this will impact what you're going to do as a real estate photographer through 2022. So I want to provide a few tips as insight and advice on what I believe you should do going forward into 2022. Advice that I'm also practicing what I preach. First thing right off the bat is if you're looking for gear, stop. I would not buy any new gear unless you have to right now because of the supply chain issues. Prices are getting jacked up so high, even on refurbished gear. I used to buy refurbished D610s and D750s, the DSLRs. You know, I don't like to buy new gear because I go through bodies like crazy. I used to buy a D610 for 500, 600 bucks. They're selling them refurbished for twice that much right now. So it's very hard to find good deals on gear, and a lot of gear may not be in stock. So do you really need to get that new camera just because the Z7 or Z9 came out, or you've got a new Canon R series, or Sony's come out with something else that's great? Do you really need it? Is it a necessity? If you really do need new gear, there's a couple things to do if you really have to have the gear. And that's, I'd consider right now looking at some possible used or refurbished gear. Refurbished is very hard to find, but there's two very reputable used gear sites that I recommend: KEH.com and MPB.com. Now, they both provide warranties on used gear. MPB is kind of unique in that they'll show you, for instance, shutter count on particular cameras, and they'll show you pictures of the exact camera or lens that you're going to be buying. KEH, though, has been around for a long time, has a great reputation. When you have these warranties, you just almost can't go wrong. So consider that if you do have to buy gear. The one good thing about gear, though, right now, is that lighting, for instance, really hasn't gone up in price. You know, I recommend a lot of the Godox products, and those haven't changed in price. So those are still really viable options right now for lighting. But when it comes to camera and it comes to lenses, definitely take a step back and just ask yourself, do I really need it, or is it something I just want? We all want new gear. We're photographers. That's just inherent to our nature. But if you don't need it, then think about just holding off. My next piece of advice is don't quit. Don't give up. So there's been a lot of pressure on all of us throughout the pandemic, and your work may be sliding, or you're just starting out and you're finding it difficult to get new work. Just wait. So we already know that there's an attrition issue with real estate photography because people get into it and realize that it is hard work. Well, it is, but a lot of us, like myself, we've been doing this for a long time and make a successful career out of it. You can too, but the thing is, you're going to have to wait. You might not be getting the gigs now, you might not get enough, and once again, like I was saying about, I need to get more clients. If you're not ready, then you're just going to make the problem worse for yourself. Work on getting good. Work on getting really, really, really good, because eventually your competitors are going to get another job. It always happens. Every year, real estate photographies drop off. They come, they go. So when you can stick with it and you get the right type of clients, it will happen. So don't quit. Don't give up. Stick with it this year, no matter how tough it gets. Next, really consider, if you haven't done so already, become a full service provider. Don't just take photos, because a lot of realtors will want a full service turnkey provider, some vendor, photographer, who can provide drone, who can provide virtual tours, who can provide video, websites, all these other things. They're important. Even though these realtors may never use these other add-ons, when they first find you, they want to know that they could count on you if they should need it. The last thing that a realtor wants is like, oh yeah, well, you know, over here, this photographer that I just met does a great job with photos. Oh, but they don't do virtual tours. Oh, they don't do video. I'd have to hire somebody else for that. Somebody comes along and goes, yeah, I can do photos. I also do video. I also do drone. I do all these things. And it's like, well, who do you think you're going to go to first? So you might have the best looking photos out there, but if you can't provide all the services that someone needs, then you're probably not going to get hired. It's the same reason why if you went to a restaurant and they didn't offer you something to drink as well, you might not go to that restaurant. You want something full service. So consider that. If you haven't learned doing videos yet, if you haven't learned the virtual tours, consider learning those skills yourself. Drone, yes, I could learn that, but I have a partner that does that. So if you don't want to learn drone and go to the hassle of, or the work or effort of getting your certification and insurance for it, then you can also consider working with other photographers in your area that provide those services. But the goal is to become full service, and now is the time to do it, because as the year progresses, as inventory more than likely will increase and it will take longer to sell homes, as more marketing material is needed, you'll be more in demand if you can provide those services. So that's how things are looking right now as we go into 2022, and I really hope that you enjoyed this video and the report and that you can apply some of this to your photography as well. If you did like this video and you want to see more, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. It won't cost anything, and as soon as one of these videos is posted, you'll be the first to know. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, take care, be safe, and get out there and shoot something.